Labor is a marathon, not a sprint. We've all heard this saying before, but if we're being honest, we would much rather be on the sprint side of things. I mean, that's how I would rather be. I would rather my labor take less time than more time. And some babies need more time, and that's totally fine. But why do some labors take a little bit longer? Why do some women end up being in labor longer? In this video, I'm going to walk through the 5 most common reasons that labor tends to slow down or stall and how you can avoid them. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Chanel and I am a doula who helps expecting families go from this place of feeling very overwhelmed, anxious, and even fearful about birth to walking into their birthdays feeling confident, excited, and in control of their experience. If that's something that you want, make sure to hit the subscribe button below and the notification bell so that every time I post a new video, you will become more educated for your birth and postpartum journey. If you don't know what stalled labor is, it's just when your contractions have spaced out or even completely stopped after having a consistent contraction pattern. And this can last for hours or it can last for minutes. Now, let me start by saying labor stalls are pretty normal and pretty common in the laboring process for a lot of women. So just because you experience some kind of stall or slowdown does not mean that we have to automatically resort to some sort of medical intervention to either speed up labor or even end labor by going into an emergency C-section. There are common things that cause labor to slow down or to even stop, and it's important that we're aware of those things so that we can actually evaluate what's going on for us and respond to them accordingly. The first and most common reason that labor tends to slow down or stall is our mental state. Now, I talk about this a lot because it is literally the most important thing that you can do to prepare yourself in labor, and it's the most important tool that you will use in labor. Our minds are extremely powerful. It's the most powerful tool that we have when it comes to laboring. However, fear is also the biggest threat that we have when it comes to labor, because when we fear something, we're going to see a spike in our cortisol levels and a decrease in our oxytocin levels. And what we need in order for labor to progress is oxytocin to be continuously flowing. So what do? Well, the first thing we have to do in pregnancy is, of course, overcome our fears. If there is some fear that you are experiencing, something that somebody said or something that you saw on social media, we need to start addressing that, because if that is not addressed, it will show up in labor. And that is going to be what holds things up, because our bodies don't feel safe when we feel fear. On the flip side of that, if we are experiencing fear in our labor process, we're gonna have to isolate ourselves. If we cannot reel ourselves back in and get ourselves to a peaceful mental space, then it might be important for us to isolate from everybody else and just reset and reconnect with our bodies and our babies. This was exactly what I had to do in my second birthing process. I started to get really in my head, like, is it gonna happen? I'm still laboring. I should have had a baby by now. I had all of these expectations in my head that were completely wrong. And so as I started to kind of talk myself out of even being able to labor, I communicated that to my birth team, and I was like, guys, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this anymore. Like, we might just have to go to the hospital. I was just getting really discouraged again, because I thought that I was gonna have a baby by then and I was still in labor. And so what was suggested for me was to go get into the shower and just take a minute to myself. And when I tell you that was the best thing that I could have done, it was the most important and best thing that I could have done. I literally got into the shower by myself. There was a midwife outside of the shower just to make sure that I was safe. And I prayed and I just reconnected with myself, reconnected with God, reconnected with my baby. And once I got out of that shower, I was in a much better mental space and I had my baby hours later. This is the power of our brain, and it's also the power of fear. So if you are experiencing sort of stall or slowdown in labor, look at yourself and ask, where am I mentally right now? Do I need to isolate and just reconnect? Am I overstimulated? Am I in fear? What is going on for me? Because this right here has to be in the right place for us to have this progressing labor in a way that's enjoyable and manageable. Now, of course, there are medical interventions that can speed this up and do it for you, but it's probably gonna be a very different physical experience and mental experience for us. So the first thing we have to do is address our mental state. Now, the second most common reason that labor slows down or stalls is due to hydration. A lot of times we will see contraction patterns get kind of wonky or even baby experiencing some level of fetal distress. And sometimes the simple solution to that is being hydrated. So what do we need to do now to even prevent ourselves from having a stall due to hydration? Well, hydrate. Drink your water. I always recommend that my clients drink between 90 to 100 ounces of water a day, or half of your body weight in ounces. Those are important goals for yourself in labor and in pregnancy, because we need to have a hydrated body. When we are not hydrated in pregnancy, which again I understand is difficult, but if we're not hydrated in pregnancy, we tend to experience more Braxton Hicks, which is pretty uncomfortable. Now, Braxton Hicks are normal, but you might end up experiencing more of them because your body is just not hydrated. The other thing about dehydration is that it could cause you to feel a little bit icky. You could have headaches, you could feel sluggish. Sometimes just drinking enough water or even adding electrolytes to your water is a simple solution. What happens if we're in labor and we start to realize that things are getting a little bit out of whack? I feel like things are slowing down, they're stalling, or they're just super inconsistent. You need to ask yourself, how much water have I had to drink today? You should be drinking water after every contraction. And if you are drinking enough water and staying hydrated throughout labor, there is going to be a positive side effect to this, which means that you're probably going to have to go to the bathroom often because your bladder is full of water. That is a sign for us to empty it. We do not want to avoid going to the bathroom in labor consistently, because what that can do is our bladder will get full with all this water, but our bladder will end up holding our babies up because it'll be in the way of baby descending. So just as much as you need to stay hydrated throughout labor, you also need to release your bladder throughout labor. And this is what I like to call spending time on the dilation station. If you haven't checked out that dilation station video, make sure that you do check that out, because that is going to help you understand the power of the throne. Sitting on the throne during labor will help your baby progress, descend into the pelvis a lot faster, because one contraction on the toilet is equivalent to about 3 contractions off the toilet. Now, it can be more intense, but a lot of people find it pretty comfortable and they hang out there a while, and then their labors tend to be pretty quick. So just as much as we need to hydrate, we also need to empty that bladder. So hydration is extremely important to help speed things up and keep things progressing in labor. Now, let's say, for example, you have had a lot of water and there are still other signs of you being dehydrated. Getting an IV of saline, which might be also suggested by your midwife or your OB or your nurse, isn't the worst thing in the world. If there are signs that you are dehydrated, that's a better first option for you to get your body hydrated more than you're probably capable of doing right now, especially if you're nauseous, you're throwing up, that's obviously making you more dehydrated. Those are pretty good go-tos without needing to go the extra step to have medical intervention. Saline is very safe for you and baby. It is just water, essentially. So that is always an option as well if you start to see that there are signs that you are dehydrated or you're just having a difficult time keeping water down. So if you are stalling, again, first ask yourself, what's my mental state? If I feel like I'm in a good place mentally, how much water have I had today? If I haven't had a lot of water in the last hour, I need to probably increase my water intake or add some electrolytes to my water so that I can make whatever water I am taking in become more hydrating for me. The third most common reason that people will see a labor stall or slow down is from your environment. The first intervention in labor is actually leaving our homes. And so you might be asking, well, Chanel, I'm not having a home birth, so does that mean I'm automatically gonna have a slowdown? Yes and no. When we do leave home and transfer from one environment, which is most likely our safe environment and our safe haven, to an unfamiliar environment, something that does not feel like home, which is the hospital, we do sometimes see a stall or a slowdown in labor, and that's totally normal. But we can avoid that. And how we can avoid that is by, one, not leaving our homes until we absolutely have to. You need to understand that the hospital is meant for you to have your baby in. You can easily have a home birth-like experience by just laboring at home as long as you can. When you get to the point where you feel like, okay, I'm probably gonna have this baby soon, let's go ahead and head to the hospital, then that's probably the time that you wanna head out. You don't wanna head out right when your first contraction starts, because women tend to labor a little bit slower in unfamiliar environments. The fourth most common reason that labor tends to slow down or stall is a lack of movement. Now, it's important that you are moving around during your pregnancy because that, of course, is going to allow for you to be more active during labor. Not only is it going to help you move around in labor more, but it's also going to help your baby be in a more optimal position so that labor can continue to progress. If we have a malpositioned baby, sometimes we see contraction patterns being a little bit funky. But if we can stay in an optimal position and move around during pregnancy, that can allow and help encourage our babies to be in a better position for labor. Now, when we are in labor, when active labor rolls around, it is important that we move and we move around, because failing to do so makes it more difficult for your baby to descend, doesn't allow for your pelvis to open up in the areas that it needs to be open so that your baby can descend and move throughout the pelvis to eventually be born. And it makes it more uncomfortable. And when you're more uncomfortable, you're probably going to tense up, and that's going to make this process more painful and possibly even longer. So it's important to be moving throughout labor. Now, what does that look like? That could be lunging, that could be walking, that could be doing curb walking, that could be on hands and knees. Whatever feels right for your body in the moment is what you should do. But we should be active during active labor. If your body tells you to rest, it's important to rest. But failing to move, again, will cause your body to tense up and make you brace the experience and brace the contraction that's coming. And we don't want that. That can actually cause you to slow down or stall in labor because you are not giving your baby the best chance to move throughout the pelvis. So ask yourself, have I moved? If I don't want to move, is there a position that I can change into to at least change positions? And I want to also be clear that even if you have an epidural, these things are possible. Even if you're not up moving around, that is okay. You can have somebody move you from side to side. And some women who've had epidurals, they were also in different positions. We had them in hands and knees. We had them on, side lying on one side and then the other. So movement is still possible even when you are stuck to the bed. And last but not least, the fifth most common reason that labor tends to slow down or stall is hunger. I know that you are probably thinking, but I'm not allowed to eat when I go into labor. Once I go to the hospital, I can't eat or drink anything. All I can have is ice chips. That is outdated research. Research actually shows that unless there's a medical reason for you to not be able to eat or drink, meaning you have an epidural or you're about to have a C-section, eating and drinking throughout labor is crucial to help labor progress. When we talk about this labor being a marathon thing, you would never expect to run that many miles for a marathon without at least having a bite of a granola bar. Come on, y'all. They have these stations throughout the process of running a marathon for people to grab and go. Drink some water, get a little bit of a boost of sugar, get a bite of a snack or something to help their body go. You need the fuel in a marathon and you need the fuel in labor. That's why it's important to eat and snack throughout labor. Now, of course, you're probably not going to be wanting to eat some huge meal, and that is okay. Make sure you're getting a good sized meal at the beginning of early labor. But you also need to make sure that you're snacking throughout labor on things that are going to give you fuel and energy. You and I would never expect to be running any sort of marathon without a bite of food. So we should never expect that your body is going to be able to sustain the energy levels that you need throughout labor without at least of a bite of a granola bar. So making sure that you have a snack bag prepared, and partners, that you are making sure that mama is getting a bite of something every hour, that is crucial to helping your labor progress. I've seen women slow down and stall, us give them a bite of something, and things get going again. Sometimes we just need a little boost of sugar, and that could just be some juice. So I will link down below some of my favorite snack items that you can add to your birth bag so that you can stay fueled throughout labor to avoid this stall from happening, just simply because you need a bite of food to eat. If your hospital does say that you are not allowed to eat or drink once you go to the hospital, this might also be more motivation to stay home longer so that you can eat, or eat in the parking lot before you go in. Whatever you gotta do, make sure that your body is fueled to labor. All right, y'all, which things do you need to prepare for the most? Which things surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below, because this is something that we don't talk about a lot, because we just end up in the situation and then we're lost and have having no idea what to do about it. For me, I knew that I had to work on my mental state in this last pregnancy. I knew that I needed to be spiritually and mentally and emotionally prepared for my third labor, because I knew my mind could go in a bunch of different places. So I spent a lot of time in this last pregnancy really just becoming spiritually, mentally, and emotionally connected so that I could keep that same level of connection and focus when it came time to labor, and it paid off. And that's something that I work on a lot with a lot of my clients, because that is usually the part that we most struggle with. So if that is you, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you do want somebody to walk hand in hand with you in this process, to be able to guide you, coach you, educate you, all the things so that you can know more than just this list of how to prepare for labor, make sure you hit that link below for my Work Your Birth program. We'll set up a Zoom call, talk about where you're at in your pregnancy, so that I can see if I can help you to get to where you want to be by the time you get into your baby's birthday. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, make sure to subscribe, and I will see y'all on the next video.